President Donald Trump is going skiing. At least that's what he told reporters he wanted to do when they asked, would you visit Norway?
I would go. We'll all go together to Norway.
Oh, yes, please do.
I want to go skiing.
I
I love Norway. I love Norway.
Why?
It's beautiful. And beautiful people.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
President Donald Trump says to the Norwegian press, I want to go skiing in Norway. It's a beautiful country, beautiful people. And he's saying all this because he was joined by the Norwegian prime minister, who has a very Norwegian name. So we'll just call him the Norwegian prime minister, so I don't mispronounce it. The Norwegian prime minister met with President Donald Trump yesterday at the White House. They, of course, were talking about many things, including NATO, including the war in Ukraine, including trade talks and tariffs, and making sure that our relationship moving forward is, of course, fair. This is one of the many world leaders who've reached out to the White House and said, hey, look, these reciprocal tariffs, let's talk about this a little bit. Let's just, you know what? Why don't I fly into Washington, D.C.? We'll have a little sit down meeting and we'll talk tariffs. And then we'll talk to the press, which is exactly what always happens. And President Donald Trump had the press in the Oval Office. He had the Norwegian prime minister there, and the media asked him about the attacks on Kyiv by Vladimir Putin the night before, which Donald Trump was none too happy about. And he posted all about it on his Truth Social when he wrote, Vladimir, stop.
Mr. President, this morning in Truth Social post, you used the words Vladimir, stop. That seemed like a slightly different message, a personal message. What is your level of frustration with President Putin?
I didn't like last night. I wasn't happy with it. And we're in the midst of talking peace, and missiles were fired. And I was not happy with it. That's what I meant, and that's, what it said.
Yeah, no one was really happy with it. The Ukraine wasn't happy with it. President Donald Trump wasn't happy with it. I can't imagine Vladimir Putin's really happy with it. But the big problem here is that President Donald Trump and his team of administrative officials, his team of Marco Rubio from the Secretary of State, or from the State Department rather, even Scott Bessent, who's been out there meeting with Ukraine, they've been trying to come to a deal now for months. And every time they come close to a deal, one of the two sides backs out or acts up or agitates the entire situation, whether it's Vladimir Zelensky in Ukraine, who doesn't seem to want this war to end, or Vladimir Putin in Russia, who also doesn't seem to want this war to end. But Marco Rubio said, with our diplomacy and with the deal in place, this war is endable. But it's not up to us here in the United States of America.
Marco, what would you say?
Well, first of all, what was put before our partners was options to discuss about things that it would take to end a war. This war is endable. Both sides just have to agree to it. We've shown them a pathway forward. We've discussed those ideas. There was a good meeting yesterday. There'll be good meetings over the weekend. We've shown them the finish line. We need both of them to say yes. But what happened last night with those missile strikes should remind everybody of why this war needs to end. It's horrible those missiles landed. What's even worse is there are today people that were alive yesterday that are not alive today because this war continues, and the president wants to stop it. And everyone should be thanking the president for being a peacemaker and trying to save lives. That's what we're trying to do here. It's not our war. We didn't start it, as you know. But we're trying to end the dying. We're trying to end the destruction. And we've shown the path forward. We can see the finish line, but both of them have to get there. We're going to do everything we can to help them get there, but they have to ultimately say yes.
And we are using a lot of pressure on both. If you think we're just in there because we're nice people, then we are nice people, but we're using a lot of pressure on both.
We're nice people until we're not nice people. We're putting a lot of pressure on these people because we need this war to end. We need the war to end. We need the dying to stop. We need the killing to stop. We need the natural resources to be renewed into the economic coffers of the United States, of Ukraine, of Russia, and NATO and the rest of Europe. They're getting skittish too. In fact, they asked the Norwegian prime minister, with the very Norwegian name, what he thought about all of this, and here's what he said.
To move towards an end of this war, U.S. engagement is critical, and President Trump made that possible. That is clear, that is obvious, it's really happening. Now, the important thing is that both parties have to know that they have to deliver, and they have to feel the pressure to deliver. Ukraine is under attack. They are defending themselves. Lives are being lost. And we believe very firmly that there needs to be a ceasefire. The initiative taken by the U.S. some time ago, it needs to be respected. And then to move on to something which both parties can own. That is the complicated part in such a dramatic war. And here I believe Europeans and Americans working together, as we do much closer now. I salute the team of President Trump of being, open in that process. We had a good discussion on this today, and then we have to move on, and we cannot lose time because this is too much drama happening. One thing is people losing their lives, but it is a bad thing for Europe, and it's a bad thing for the world to having such a broad conflict going on. It can have ramifications far beyond Ukraine.
All right, so basically the gist of this is, look, President Donald Trump is making an end of this war, something that is possible. Donald Trump could bring about peace in Ukraine, could bring about peace in Russia, but the fact of the matter is Ukraine and Russia both need to come to the table. President Donald Trump, his administration, Marco Rubio, everybody here in the United States of America has done everything they can to facilitate peace in this region and in Europe and across the globe. It's now just down to these two folks. What are they willing to do? One of the reporters asked, do you still agree, President Trump, that Ukraine will have to give something up in order to end this battle?
Do you still agree that Ukraine have to give some territory away to win peace?
Well, it depends what territory. They've been fighting. They've lost a lot of territory. And we'll do the best we can. Working with Ukraine, we'll do the best we can. But they lost a lot of territory. When you say Crimea, that was handed over during a president named Barack Hussein Obama. That had nothing to do with me, Crimea. That was 11 years ago with Obama. And they made a decision. There wasn't a bullet fired. There was no fighting. There was no anything. They just handed it over. Now they say, well, can you get it back? I think that's going to be a very difficult thing to do. That was given by Barack Obama when he was president, not by Donald Trump.
Donald Trump talking to reporters and explaining, look, there's a lot of history between these two countries. They've been battling for centuries, and Ukraine was once part of Russia. Now it's not. And then Crimea was taken over during Barack Obama's administration. It was basically handed over to avoid what we see now, which is a war. And now Russia wants more and Ukraine wants more. And there's going to have to be some kind of peace. Whether or not this peace can happen with Vladimir Zelensky in power is questionable. Whether or not this peace can happen with Vladimir Putin, or either of these two clowns. If either of them remain in power, peace may not be a possibility. But we do know one thing: peace will never be a possibility unless if someone else were president. President Barack Obama, President Biden. All of them exacerbated these wars in Eastern Europe. Donald Trump is looking to end the war in Eastern Europe. He's looking to end wars everywhere, but he's looking for peace in the Middle East. Again, and his influence and his relationship with Benjamin Netanyahu is facilitating that as well. He still wants to move into Gaza and make Gaza a beautiful, a beautiful, livable environment that a majority of countries around the globe have a stake in, so that it'll continue to thrive and not be one of these third world, just bombing centers where there's so much death and destruction. He wants to relocate the Palestinian people to Egypt, to a settlement where they can be safe and happy and live out their days. There's a lot of planning going on, and President Donald Trump, if he accomplishes all of these, should be in line for a Nobel Peace Prize, and that is something that is not going unnoticed by the Norwegian press.
Do I deserve the Nobel?
If you mention great peace.
Well, maybe for the Abraham Accords. I don't want to get ahead of myself on this one, but they say for the Abraham Accords. And by the way, speaking of that, we're going to be filling it up. A lot of countries want to come into the Abraham Accords. We have 4. And Biden did nothing on that one, too. It's the same 4. But they're great countries, and they were brave doing it, and it's worked out very well. And we're going to be filling up the Abraham Accords. They're going to be, I think, filling it up very rapidly.
Yeah, Donald Trump with the Abraham Accords did something really incredible. It was Israel, the United States of America, the United Arab Emirates. It was really, really a crazy, unknown situation that nobody thought was possible. Nobody thought there would ever be kind of peace agreements in the Middle East between some of these countries, but Donald Trump made it happen. He was passed over, of course, for any kind of Nobel Peace Prize a couple of times, and now the talk is popping up again between the Abraham Accords and anything that he may be able to facilitate with Ukraine and Russia. Would he be a nominee for the Nobel Peace Prize? Would he be a winner? He's definitely more deserving of it than any other president who's won, including Barack Obama. And Marco Rubio also commented on that as well.
There's great, enormous opportunity to grow the Abraham Accords, but I would just point to one thing. of all the leaders in the world today, no leader is working harder to prevent wars or end them than President Trump is right now. That's why we're talking to Iran. That's why we're engaged with Ukraine and Russia. It's the desire to prevent these wars from breaking out and to end the ones that exist already. And again, I just think it's tremendous for our country to be led by a president who desires to bring peace and establish peace and protect peace. So it's hard work.
And it's work that's necessary, and it's work that's getting done. Thanks again to President Donald Trump and his team. And he continues to have great success, not just diplomatically, not just with the immigration policies, despite the fact that there are activist judges and media personalities and Democrats who are trying to stop Donald Trump from keeping America safe. He's also having great success with the tariffs and the economy. And the tariffs and the economy are falling into place. And we see every single day more and more countries, just like Norway, stepping up to the table, literally coming to the United States of America with agreements. They're calling Kevin Hassett. They're calling Scott Bessent. They're calling everybody. And they're saying, look, we want to make a deal. We're ready to make a deal. We want to do it quickly because we don't want to lose any money. And we don't want to be locked out of the United States of America because it is the #1 market in the entire world. And Scott Bessent actually mentioned that and talked about it because, once again, this was one of the prime reasons why the Prime Minister of Norway came to the White House yesterday.
We had a very successful bilateral meeting with the Republic of South Korea today. We may be moving faster than I thought, and we will be talking technical terms as early as next week as we reach an agreement on understanding as soon as next week. So South Koreans came early. They came with their A game, and we will see if they follow through on that.
And not only that, National Economic Council Chairman Kevin Hassett had an update as well about countries that continue to want to come to the table.
Well, in the end, President Trump recognizes, as we all do, that we're going to get a lot of tariff revenue, and it's going to help us balance the budget. And if people want to avoid the tariffs, then if they onshore production in the U.S., then we'll get tax revenue from that. And so this is a very fiscally sound move that we're making. And again, we're bringing everybody to the table. The way I like to think about it is, imagine the relationships that we had, the trading relationships and international relationships that we had, 6 months ago, and then imagine what they're going to look like a year from now. And of course, they're going to be radically better for us and better for them, better for the American worker, better for real wages, for economic growth, and so on. And so, of course, markets should be celebrating these moves.
And the markets are up again on Donald Trump's tariff agreements that he's signing with South Korea and other countries. And he's right about the amount of revenue that comes in, because with the tariffs, you're getting tariff revenue. You're getting billions of dollars paid by these companies, or by these countries rather, to come and do business in the United States of America. That's a boon. And that's something that can pay down the national debt or fund Social Security or any other expenditure that this government has. And this government has a lot of expenditures. We know that. We know that thanks to the Doge team. The other thing that happens is you start to see these manufacturing jobs come into the United States of America. And when a new manufacturing plant is built, whether it's an AI plant or a microchip plant, or whether it's car companies bringing their manufacturing back to the United States of America, the other added incentive or the other added bonus is every single job that is created comes with it income tax, because there's still income tax, there's payroll taxes. So every new job created isn't just more money for the companies or more money for the workers, it's more money for the United States of America. And by creating more jobs, you create more internal revenue. And by raising tariffs, you create more external revenue. And when you have more internal revenue and more external revenue, you're going to be able to lower the deficit and also cut taxes and make everybody just super happy. And that, of course, is all President Donald Trump wants. He wants everybody to be as happy as he is on a ski slope in Norway, cutting up the powder. I haven't skied in a long time. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what all the terminology is, but this is the way forward. This is what President Donald Trump is planning to do. This is what Donald Trump is doing. This is what Donald Trump is going to continue to do. He's going to continue to make America safe again, rich again, great again. And there's people who are trying to stop him. But the one thing we know about President Donald Trump is he cannot be stopped. One more piece of very exciting news is that Doug Burgum, the Secretary of the Interior, was in Texas to unveil the Jocelyn Nungary National Wildlife Refuge. You may remember Jocelyn Nungary was the little girl who was killed by an illegal criminal alien, and her mother was at the State of the Union. She was at the border with President Donald Trump, and Donald Trump unveiled, I guess it was a joint session of Congress, he unveiled plans for the Jocelyn Nungary National Wildlife Reserve. She was a big fan of the animals, so they renamed this reserve after her. And her mother and her family was on site as they unveiled it. The sign right there for everyone to see. It was really an incredible, touching moment. And again, another moment that proves, once again, Donald Trump makes promises and he keeps promises. And this was one of them. And now it's a beautiful reminder that not only is Jocelyn Nungary's memory ingrained forever in the tapestry of the United States of America, but also it's a reminder of why we need solid borders, why we need secure borders, and why we need to take these criminal aliens and extricate them from our country as soon as possible. Listen, there's so much more to talk about, and that's why we have a second daily podcast called Mark Kaye Saves the Republic every single day at 1 p.m. You can watch us live, or if you prefer, you can go to your favorite podcast platform and listen to it. You can go to Spotify or iTunes. We're pretty much everywhere. Just search for Mark Kaye Saves the Republic. Download, listen, and enjoy.